This is Malic. Throughout his childhood, his mother and father have told him many tales contrary to their endless working lives in the Roughworks, especially those of the other regions of FRUMA, which had different cultures, lifestyles, and worldviews, all of which sparked a curiosity in Malic since the day he planted a jute for the first time. And 2 years ago, he managed to involve himself in such an environment by purchasing a ticket to the Auburn forest. When he arrived, he saw the golden Auburn leaves, tall, all-encompassing, and most importantly, organic. He played an instrument carved from maple wood, an odd composition compared to the steel units back home. He enjoyed a hearty, filling meal at the Red Fox, which he certainly needed from the steps he had to take to reach it. He visited a thriving Pishless, and although he did not have the courage to enter the hot springs, he noted the relaxed atmosphere that the place provides. And lastly, he made friends with a fellow outsider, where they discovered what the wind chimes meant to locals, spotted animal species they have never seen before, and hunted a few lift leaves on their own. It was the most eventful experience of Malic's life up to that point. How was this achieved, you may ask? Well, Malic worked overtime every day for upwards to a year, and used that extra money to buy the ticket. You see, life in the Roughworks is as monotonous as it is grueling. Every resident is subjected to perform harsh and menial labor from sunrise to sunset, oftentimes at the expense of everything they hold dear. The land sprawls with towering metal for the sake of production, the water is heavily polluted, and the work quotas lay distant with near impossible expectations of meeting them. All of this for barely enough emeralds to feed someone one more day, if not significantly less. To the outside eye, it waves multiple humanitarian red flags. To the average Roughworker, it is simply their duty to Her Majesty. Malic's duty is to make cutlery, which is to be used in luxury restaurants in the Highlands and the Aelumia Cita, and despite being the one behind hundreds of high-quality utensils, he himself is stuck eating with rusted, dull ones. And this, Malic believes, is where his whole world fell apart. The duty he was given his entire life, the immense quotas and back-breaking labor, the price he is prompted to pay as a thanks for being alive, has amounted to nothing. The Roughworks is the only home he knows. Yet his trip in the Auburn forest only proves how much more fulfillment he will miss out on if he stayed, even if it means going against his life's assigned purpose. So, 2 years after resettling in his usual routine, he seeks to find a better life elsewhere. Hey, did you hear about them changing the E-block on our calendars or whatever? Nah, none of that sort. Her Majesty hasn't showed up in 2 festivals by now. Nobody knows why. I've overheard constables speak about Rel was killing her or something. Said traitor using 2 FA as our year. But the dang constables insist we keep using 122 IA. What does FA even mean? Sounds like free age? Freedom age? Since Her Majesty's gone, power was given to the people, and get back to work! If one wishes for refuge away from their home, there are multiple steps they have to consider before it is achieved. For Malic, he has to 1. Find a destination and all the fancy intricacies that come with assimilating there. 2. Renounce his citizenship to the Roughworks since he can't simply walk through the gates without facing scrutiny. And 3. Pack his belongings, leave what he can't bring, take the arduous trip, you name it. Malic has spent the past 2 years weighing on which place fits best for him, especially so after the unrest that's been happening since around the time of his Auburn trip. This, alongside never working overtime again, has given him more free time to study gates, familiarize with certain cultures, and take very brief trips. So this is as far as he knows. In order to properly reside in a region, he must have a passport belonging to its city. Every passport is signed by the sovereign of that region, and unless he can somehow find contact with one of them, his only way of obtaining a passport is through a work visa. Naturalization is, unfortunately, minimally considered, so the unlikely cases of already establishing residency, finding a native spouse, or having native ancestors will not help him. With these universal guidelines out of the way, Malic has 3 region choices we can evaluate. Malic has longtime friends working at the Auburn lumber mill, which is where he found out about the work visa. Alongside discovering Auburn's community during his vacation, he reconnected with them, and to his surprise, they aren't as tied to the Roughworks as it may seem. Many even have the fortune to live in Esperant to make traveling to work easier, and the only issue they have are meeting lumber quotas. But one particular thing Malic remembers is that through the abandoned steelworks near where he worked, there is a secret entrance to the lumber mill if he can get past the slag beetle infestation, which he has since snuck through every now and then. On the topic of the Auburn forest itself, Esperin is quaint but outdoorsy, since instead of working to receive amenities, citizens hunt for resources and trade them for others, which is quite bizarre to Malic, but eventually grows to understand that production isn't the main goal of their daily activities, which leads him to think that their hours truly are more relaxed. This is the reason why Malic made a few transfer requests to the lumber mill over the years. You can gauge how the administration responded, judging by the fact that he still lives in Tamaska, but he is confident he could still pull some strings, sneak through a few more times, get his hand on a signed passport, walk through the gate, and it'll be like he has always lived there. However, this is Malic's last resort option.
Malic, I apologize for the handwriting since we must make haste and I'm used to a typewriter, but I remember we talked about bringing you here one day. With your modesty, you'd fit right in. Unfortunately, some of the cursed have invaded the citadel, and Her Majesty placed an evacuation order on most of the city. My father used his connections as a professor to secure housing, so if you ever arrive in Highlands, we'll be sure to meet again. But one thing you must know, the Aelumia Citadel is a battlefield crawling with soldiers and cursed, and I don't want you stepping in there without knowing how unsafe it is. I'll write to you again soon. Love, Madison.
Damn it, Malic thought. We're down to 2 regions. But at least he wouldn't be alone if he was to consider the Highlands. I mentioned that Malic met a friend who also was elsewhere than Auburn. That friend is no other than Madison, and they become pen pals after the trip. She tells Malic everything. Like the abnormal rift that opened above the citadel 2 years ago, which may have contributed to Her Majesty's disappearance. Or how the high-quality cutlery he made is actually used. Basically stuff that he wouldn't know as a Roughworker. Malic is intrigued by how much uncensored information is flowing through the Highlands, and despite that, they go on about their days regardless of the severity of the news. Even when their sovereign is dead! He's not sure what he would do there, but with what he knows of the Highlock Bazaar, he can probably make and sell better cooking appliances than the ones in the restaurants. Also, wouldn't you know, Madison sent him so many pictures, it got the attention of the postmaster since he knew Madison from his university days. This was a valuable connection for Malic. Through the postmaster, he was able to reach out to the customs office at the Aelumia gatefront. Unfortunately, they stated that they aren't well equipped to deal with Highlands business from regions other than Aelumia, nor transfer people as humans do not count as goods. The clerk even devised a solution to somehow give Malic a valid Highlock passport, then put him in a crate and mark it off as carrying something similar to his weight, then carry that container through the catacombs and plant it in a Highlands-bound caravan. But something this complicated, costly, and illegal is way too risky to pull off without a hitch, and the customs clerk, Malic, Madison, and the postman all sadly agree. It's possible. Just not worth it. Yet Malic persists. Hearing that made him attempt to see the Highlands for himself. During 2 FA's Roughworks Festival, after the citizens of Tamaska ponder the second time around on why the festival speech Her Majesty and the Sovereigns are missing, he snuck out on what he thought was a quick excursion to It seems as if Malic was knocked out from behind the tree. No, Roughworker is not Changeling. I've never seen Changelings look like they're from Industrial District, or if they even know what it is. Ah, you're awake. Good. I would introduce myself, but I'm sure you have many questions. And to get back to work, no? Actually, I was just trying to get to the Highlands. Tamaska to Highlock by foot? Don't you guys have metro? Oh, the price, I get it. Well, as you may have seen, you're not quite there yet. You'll need our help crossing Mistwoods, so it's best to get to know each other, yes? You may call me Tuvu, and I was placed in the deer. Malic and Tuvu had a stellar, yet somehow productive conversation. They eventually talked about Malic's plans to move out. and Tuvu thought to introduce Malic to Aldwell as a possible destination. And since he wouldn't be bound to legal presence, he could change his mind and move on to one of the other two regions later. The canopy helped Malic get a medallion, and in exchange, Malic taught the canopy how to carve out better spoons and forks. Okay, festival's closing. Thank you for everything today. You best assume I'll visit the canopy again. No worries. Many foxes were very grateful that they are eating much more efficiently. When you break free from quotas and come back, bring some of your high-lock cutlery, yes? Malic sneaks back to Tamaska, wondering how differently he imagined the Mistwoods to be, especially in spite of the propaganda he's been told his whole life. Despite the issues and the wildlife, people are living fine there. Most importantly, however, if he could legally shake off his Roughworks citizenship, it is as easy as going to the Mistwoods and living a completely new life. This is, objectively, the easiest option. It is so easy, in fact, that Malic could go rogue, escape, and hide in Aldwell until the constables forget about him. But he has heard of inquisitors going after retired Roughworkers simply for stealing bread multiple decades ago, so he'd rather make this as legitimate of a process as possible, which is what he's going to focus on now. The unfortunate thing about quitting a lifelong contract working for the state is the fact that it's a lifelong contract working for this... You get the point. To stop working in the Roughworks is essentially heresy, or treason, or lèse-majesté, and Roughworkers were never supposed to give any thought about what the regions are, much less actively attempt to leave. Malic is certain he was one of the few who have gone this far in thought alone. Perhaps there's a loophole? Malic can't wrap his brain around it quite yet, but he's asking around. Did you know? There are countless ways to resign. One I know is to change your name in another region, then fake your death in the Roughworks. Nobody will know. Or another way I know is to change your life's assignment yourself, Could be with money, or another way they don't know. Now you know! It appears that Malic cannot escape the binds without committing some sort of records fraud, or by paying off his contract, which isn't an action supported by the Crown in the first place. He thinks for a moment. There's something the guy in the bush said that caught his ear. Changing it himself. Which may not need to involve anything shady. A light bulb dings in Malic's head. Dear Sovereign Susu, I would first like to thank you for the life and opportunities you have allowed me as a citizen of the Roughworks. Your creations have inspired me to find passions of my own, and I see it is only fair you should enjoy something of mine. Please accept these gifts as a means of appreciation, as well as an invitation for a request I have. Would there be anything I can do to pursue my ambitions further, in the wake of backbreaking work hours and toxic factory conditions? We can discuss terms whenever you're available. Thank you. From Malic, employee number 12390. Malic is lucky to have any sleep after spending the majority of last night somehow uninterrupted on his gift. He wakes up ready for another dozen-hour shift. But before he leaves, he sees a note pinned on the wall that simply says, "Thank you," by someone named S. Is he relieved of his duties? Walking outside, he realizes that he slept way more than he should. Despite the workers singing in the background, Tamaska is completely empty, and the constables are not hammering him over being late to work. It seems as if his request was granted. But why so easily? No time to worry about it. He heads back into his house to gather as many of his belongings as he can, then enter the Mistwoods for good, knowing he will have the autonomy to figure out other regions there. It is time to start a new life. There is knocking on the door. Seems we got good shoes in our midst. You're a little too well liked around FRUMA, How'd you get connections with foreigners? Wait, what? Are the names Forky and Big Spoon familiar to you? No, not at all. Well, you've made even the Sovereign a little happy for a liking, so I haven't used an issue, see? You're under arrest for conspiring against the Crown, Malic. Wait!
Why are we still doing this? We could use him to fight the curse instead of, you know.
Orders from Sovereign Auburn are still in place. If anyone from the territory the army still controlling is acting up, we do the same as we always do. You are a new recruit, being sent to the Wind Province to fight in their war. You enlisted because you figured they could make use of your aptitudes. FRUMA is nothing but your origin, and your home lies within Wynn and their war that you will forever give your life for. Am I understood, Malic?
So Malic, I remember you telling me you worked at a tool factory that also makes cutlery, instead of a cutlery factory. Some of the wrenches my father uses indeed have that Malic flair. I'd recognize it from a kilometer away. I know you just like cooking and dining. I can definitely show you some of our cuisine when I get the chance. Remember the train we first met, and how you saved that detective from being falsely accused of the murder? That's how I knew you were a good person from the start.
Oh, that was nothing. I only wanted to tell the truth. Oh, good grief. There goes the sporks or whatever he told me about.
You knew him too?
Quite fondly, yes.
Just because you're from the industrial district doesn't mean you're like the others. I really appreciate you giving me that insight. And I hope you think the same of Highlanders. But no matter where you go, Malic, I'm always proud of you.
Thank you. Bye now.
I'll visit again soon.
Did all this? It seems so. Looks like you had a more extravagant love life than Dr. Picard. Myself! No, Doc. She was only a friend, I think. Oh, no, I jest. Really, though, I suppose this is one way of living somewhere else, right? Honestly? Yeah, but it feels like I had some unfinished business in FRUMA. Like, with friends. I don't know how I only remember now of all times. Well, you're in luck. I've heard the gate to Fort Tehran has opened many times since the Queen's disappearance. Why don't you go back, now that you don't have to work there? Wait, what? They never told me about. Doc, thank you. I'm dropping everything, heading over there right now.
Hey, say hello to that soldier you met on the train for me, please. They were my sister. Whatever.
So hi, I'm back on YouTube after a good few years and finally figured out the kind of stuff I want to make. I'm a story and world building person who almost exclusively plays Wynncraft, so you can expect that in the future. Take this video as like a demo, I suppose. Like, I'm still figuring out a lot of everything, really. But I'm glad I can make something somewhat complete. Please give me feedback though, I'm kind of open to it. I guess if you're new and you want more of me, I stream Win on YouTube and Twitch every 1 to 2 weeks, but that's pretty much it, to be honest with you. This video is also dedicated to my birthday today. I've been awake for 45 hours now. I've only been editing, by the way. I have no idea how I'm still functioning. Also, can I mention that Tuvu was originally supposed to be Captain Ruri, but I didn't have a canopy mask, so I scrapped a bunch of Heroes cosmetics and got the deer one. It's better than nothing, but I really did not feel like replacing Ruri with Fuhu. Then I thought about a canopy recruit with similar personality to Ruri, and I hope that doesn't stray too much into fanfiction. Not that I'm saying this entire video isn't fanfiction, but you get the point.